Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI, and relax with us online at CHFI.com.
From the heart of the city, this is the soundtrack to One Tree in the Springtime. Good evening, I'm Don Jackson. To see a hillside white with dogwood bloom is to know a particular ecstasy of beauty. But to walk the gray winter woods and find the buds which will resurrect that beauty in another May is to partake of continuity. The words of Hal Borland in the New York Times, November 28th, 1948. One tree in the spring, the dogwood, this hour, with lovers and other strangers, from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, RyanDan, Like the Sun, and Elton John's Circle of Life. They looked out across the endless acres of Gerald O'Hara's newly plowed cotton fields toward the red horizon. Now that the sun was setting in a welter of crimson behind the hills across the Flint River, the warmth of the April day was ebbing into a faint but balmy chill. Spring had come early that year with warm, quick rains and sudden frothing of pink peach blossoms and dogwood dappling with white stars, the dark river swamp, and far-off hills. Already, the plowing was nearly finished, and the glory of the sunset colored the fresh-cut furrows vermilion and scarlet and maroon, where shadows lay along the sides of the trenches. The whitewashed brick plantation house seemed an island set in a wild red sea, a sea of spiraling, curving, crescent billows, petrified suddenly at the moment when the pink-tipped waves were breaking into surf. For here were no long, straight furrows such as could be seen in the yellow clay fields of the flat middle Georgia country, or in the lush black earth of the coastal plantations. The rolling foothill country of North Georgia was plowed in a million curves to keep the earth rich from washing down into the river bottoms. It was a savagely red land, blood-colored after rains, brick dust and droughts, the best cotton land in the world. It was a pleasant land of white houses, peaceful plowed fields, and sluggish yellow rivers, but a land of contrasts, of brightest sun glare and densest shade. The plantation clearings and miles of cotton fields smiled up to a warm sun, placid, complacent. At their edges rose the virgin forests, dark and cool even in the hottest noons, mysterious, a little sinister, the soughing pines seeming to wait with an age-old patience to threaten with soft sighs. Be careful, be careful. We had you once. We can take you back again. An excerpt from Chapter 1 of Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, published in 1936 by Macmillan. This hour, the dogwood in spring, with lovers and other strangers, and 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Sarah McLachlan with World on Fire, and Ray Charles with Georgia on My Mind. There is another time of the year when the dogwood is conspicuous. This is an excerpt from an article that appeared in the Baltimore Sun, September 1st, 1991. It was written by Alice Steinbach. And I quote, "It all happens so quickly. The days turning shorter. the leaves going red on the dogwood tree, the sunlight slanting through the windows at a different angle. Then one day you notice that the garden seems quite still, and you're aware that your summer clothes feel all wrong, the colors too light, the shoes too bare. Porches start to look emptier, and the air is no longer as fragrant, with the smell of steaks sizzling on a grill. If we listen carefully, we can almost hear the sound of a door closing. As it swings shut, we catch our last glimpse of the brilliant light of that high, bold season we call summer. Unquote. In those past few excerpts, the one from Margaret Mitchell in Gone with the Wind and the one from writer Alice Steinbach, we see the dogwood at both ends of the year. There is something special about this tree, for what it signals in the spring and the fall, and the legend that surrounds it. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Jacksoul on a Shady Day. And yes, it will come eventually. I'd like to recommend that you read yesterday's posting on my blog called The Easter Bonnet, in case you missed it, as well as one posted on Good Friday about 5 trees. This hour, one of those trees. Log on to the CHFI website, follow the links on the homepage to my blog at CHFI.com. And Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Romance set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
And welcome back to Lovers and Other Strangers, now a blog as well at CHFI.com. I'm Don Jackson. This is an excerpt from the preface to the book The Christmas Shoes by Donna Van Leer, and published in 2001 by St. Martin's Press. Van Leer writes, "Some people go their entire lives missing the small miracles that happen throughout the day. Those small blessings God sends from heaven to make us smile, laugh, or to break our hearts and gently nudge us closer to His side. I used to miss those tiny miracles. My children's giggles, their first awkward steps, their little hands wrapped gingerly around my fingers for support. I missed the sense of renewal as one season changed into the next. Our dogwoods, scrawny limbs exploding into magnificent blossoms each spring, and summers when the giant oaks in our backyard dress themselves in thick foliage, shading our home. I never noticed my wife's warm glances and easy laugh. I missed the blessing of her love for me. One night when joy was far away, God's grace touched me and opened my eyes. That same grace has inspired me to write this story, to share with you some of the things I have learned. Though it's true, no one could have told me any of this then. We all have questions in this life. It's taken me a long time to figure out what the really important questions are, the ones that matter. Not how am I going to make enough money, or what can I do to get promoted? No. More like, what are the flowers thinking beneath the snow? When do birds make reservations to fly south? What is God's plan for my life? What are my wife's dreams? A year ago, I was finally able to connect all of the pieces. I met a young man who told me how it all happened. Now I know the truth. Some people, perhaps someone like you, may write off this story as coincidence, a chance encounter, the random crossing of two lives. There was a time just a few years ago when I would have said the same. Back then, you could not have convinced me that God would use a pair of shoes to change someone's life. But now, I believe. Donna Van Leer, from The Christmas Shoes, published in 2001 by St. Martin's Press, and there is another mention of the dogwood tree. In the 1989 edition of the Friendship Book of Francis Gay, published by D.C. Thompson and Company, Gay writes, a beautiful legend tells how a monk found the crown of thorns which Jesus wore and placed it on the altar in his church on Good Friday. On Easter morning, the monk went to the chapel to remove the relic, which he now felt was out of keeping with the joy of Easter Day. However, when he opened the door, the whole place was filled with a wonderful perfume. The early morning sunlight streaming through an eastern window fell on the altar, where lay now not the crown of thorns, but a crown of blooms. The thorns had blossomed overnight into flowers, rare and sweet and lovely. The words of Francis Gay from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Rod Stewart with Faith of the Heart, and 5 for Fighting with the Riddle. In the 1990 edition of the Friendship Book of Francis Gay, published by D.C. Thompson and Company, was this: Have you heard the legend of the dogwood? At the time of the crucifixion, the dogwood was just as tall as any of the forest trees. It was so strong and straight that it was chosen as timber for the cross. To be used for such a cruel purpose greatly distressed the tree. But Jesus sensed this and promised, never again shall the dogwood tree grow large enough to be used as a cross. Henceforth it shall be slender, bent, and twisted, and its blossoms shall be in the form of a cross, with 2 long and 2 short petals. In the center of the outer edge of each petal there will be nail prints marked with rust, and in the center of the flower will be a crown of thorns, and all who see it will remember. If you look closely at the blossom of the dogwood, you will see these marks. Francis Gay, the 1990 edition of his Friendship Book. Lovers and Other Strangers, from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Josh Groban and You Are Loved. Don't give up. I mentioned in my Good Friday blog that I have a dogwood on my property. It was planted by a previous owner of our house. Featured in that blog was something from the April calendar page in the 1990 edition of Harris's Farmer's Almanac, and I quote, "Any pathway in the beautiful spring countryside will do as a special proven cure for down in the dumpitis. There are so many special and beautiful things to see that you will be a different and happier person before you use up very much of that trail. Take, for instance, the tree of Good Friday, the wild dogwood that is so full of delicate, cross-shaped flowers. Those blossoms are the flower symbols of the crucifixion. In those long-ago days, when the wood of the dogwood was not shamed yet by its use for the cross, the tree grew tall and straight and strong, which was the reason it was used for making crosses upon which criminals died. But after it was used for the crucifixion, God ordained that it would never be strong or straight enough or large enough again for the building of a cross. To this day, the beautifully blossomed dogwood is a misshapen, scraggly tree with twisted branches bent towards heaven in supplication for forgiveness. Its blossoms tell the story of its shame. Blossoms so beautiful that in most places it is against the law to harm or cut a dogwood tree, not even a branch. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Stay tuned. Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Your life set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at CHFI.com.
We're in the heart of Toronto, around the world on the internet, and now a blog as well at CHFI.com. I'd like to recommend that you read yesterday's writing called The Easter Bonnet, in case you missed it, as well as one posted on Good Friday about 5 trees. Log on to the CHFI website, follow the links on the homepage to my blog at CHFI.com. Good evening once again, I'm Don Jackson. A writer in the 3rd century wrote, "There was never any yet that wholly could escape love, and never shall there be any. Never so long as beauty shall be, never so long as eyes can see." The Great Escape this hour with Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Rupert Holmes with Escape, and simply read, Holding Back the Years. The date was March 21st, 1963, that Alcatraz, which earned a reputation as the world's most secure penitentiary, was finally closed down. That was little more than a year later, or after an escape from the prison proved that it wasn't as secure a facility as people thought. The 1979 Clint Eastwood film Escape from Alcatraz documented the one and only time that an escape was made from the prison in 1962. Incidentally, the 3 of them who made that escape were never heard from again. It reminded me of another classic, the 1963 Steve McQueen film, The Great Escape, that documented how some of the POWs in an escape-proof German POW camp came up with an ingenious plan to break free. Their plans involved a tunnel under the very feet of their captors. Another film was the 1957 classic Bridge on the River Kwai, based on a novel about the battle of wits and wills between a Japanese POW camp commander and a British colonel concerning the construction of a railway bridge and the one escaped prisoner who returned to destroy it. It was an award-winning film based on a novel by Pierre Buell, American presidential candidate in this current election year, knows what it was to be a prisoner of war. Hollywood found an enduring theme in films that dealt with escapes to freedom. A short list might include Escape from Fort Bravo, Escape from L.A., Escape from New York, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. And so on, and so on. Human beings have never been fond of being restricted. Something in our souls longs to be free. Even during our workday, we're sometimes prone to daydreaming. While being away from our desks, we might be thinking of a vacation that is planned for the future, or just being home with the family at day's end. Tonight, The Escape Artist, with Lovers and Other Strangers, from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Celine Dion with You and I, and Kelly Clarkson and Breakaway. This was a story called Butterfly Insights. It was written by Joey Lake, posted on the internet some years back, and I quote, "A marvelous lesson appeared for me just now as I was exiting through the garage to come to this little play place they call an office. As I opened the garage door, I startled a large moth, which upon spreading its wings, displayed a bright red tail hidden by the motley brown wings, more a butterfly than a moth. It flew immediately to its perceived escape, the circle-topped window, where it frantically tried to exit through the invisible wall of closed glass. I raised the third car garage door in hopes of aiding its escape. That caused it to fly higher and higher, and became entangled in a spider web. Fearful that it would remain entangled in the web, I selected a long-handled broom to assist him escaping the tangled threads. At this, he returned to furiously popping his wings and banging into the glass, which was, in his perspective, the pathway of escape, but remained his cage. By simply turning his focus to one side, he would have easily exited his prison. Rather, due to his intent on one direction, he remained confined, captive." The words of Joy Lake. Tonight, The Escape, with Lovers and Other Strangers, from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, that's Shaye with Beauty. Tonight's companion writing is The Great Escape. I'd like to recommend that you read yesterday's blog called The Easter Bonnet as well, because in that one is another escape. Log on to the CHFI website, follow the links on the homepage to my blog section at chfi.com. And Lovers and Other Strangers returns. I'm Don Jackson.
Passion set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI. Toronto's light favorites, 98.1 CHFI. And relax with us online at chfi.com.
And welcome back to Lovers and Other Strangers, now a blog as well at chfi.com. I'm Don Jackson. There was an interesting item in today's social studies column of the Globe and Mail, and I quote, "Frank Ahern is a U.S. privacy expert who helps half a dozen people disappear every year." This is from the Northern Echo of England. "When you're looking for someone," he says, "you're actually looking for the information they've left behind." Some of his advice: take information companies have on you and destroy it beyond recognition. Using utility companies as an example, they might have your number, address, your mom's number. You have to go and change that. Have your mail sent to a post office box in a separate town. Avoid credit cards. If renting a car, give them a fake phone number. Create false leads for sleuths to follow. Mr. Ahern will take a client's debit card and send it to contacts across the country who each spend a small amount. The same contacts will also phone the client's family. If a skip tracer accesses the bank account or the phone records, they won't know where to look. Use prepaid phones, one each for incoming and outgoing calls, and change them regularly. When you're done, clear the history and leave the phone on a park bench. Unquote. That's how you can literally escape, how to disappear from the world. I thought it interesting. And this, back in the old days, communication wasn't so easy. Folks would wait weeks, months to hear from a loved one. So they took time to write from their hearts. But nowadays, it's mostly bills, sweepstakes, free detergent, and those little itty-bitty boxes. Nobody's communicating anymore. They're just wasting trees. An excerpt from one of the scripts from the CBS television series Touched by an Angel, featured in the collection When an Angel Speaks. Compiled by executive producer Martha Williamson, it's a fireside book published by Simon & Schuster. Here's another excerpt. People are too busy to meet themselves anymore. Everybody's faxing and modeming and onlining and inputting and downloading and overnighting. If you don't like it, change the channel, press the button, escape, delete. You can send anything to anybody, anywhere in the world in seconds. But it still takes the same time it always took to know a soul, to mend a broken heart, to give birth to a child. Even in a world of change, some things just don't. Lovers, Other Strangers, Eric Clapton, and Change the World. Did you watch the PBS series on the Civil War? This is one of my favorite excerpts from a letter from a young soldier to his wife. If I do not return, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I loved you, nor that when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, I will whisper your name. Sarah, do not mourn me dead. Think I am gone, and wait for thee, for we shall meet again. Sullivan Ballou, the soldier who wrote those heartfelt words, died within a week of its writing at the first battle of Bull Run. In the Reader's Digest Almanac of the Uncanny was this: showman Harry Houdini once hoped that spiritualism would help him contact the spirit of his adored mother. But his investigations of professional mediums exposed their tricks, and he denounced communication with the dead as self-deception or deliberate fraud. Born in Hungary, Houdini was taken to the United States as a child. He later became a master magician and escapologist who performed some amazing feats. He made an elephant disappear, freed himself from a straitjacket while handcuffed, and although chained from head to foot, could escape from submerged, locked boxes. Yet Houdini set up his most provocative stunt on his deathbed, a survival pact with his wife, Bess. From the great beyond, he would send her the message, Rosabelle, believe, conveyed by code words that they had used in a mind-reading act. Bess attended many seances and offered a large reward for her husband's message, but to no avail. Then in January 1929, the spiritualist medium Arthur Ford spoke in a trance through Fletcher, his control or spirit guide. Overcome, Bess said the words spelt out Rosabelle, believe. This was front-page news throughout the world. Bess signed a statement witnessed by 3 people, including the associate editor of Scientific American, I wish to declare that the message in its entirety and in the agreed-upon sequence given to me by Arthur Ford is the correct message prearranged between Mr. Houdini and myself. Skeptics suspected that Bess and Ford were collaborating in a publicity stunt, but Bess rejected this. Then, amazingly, she retracted her written statement and continued to deny that she had received a message from her husband until her death in 1943. The survival pact had not been well planned. Bess knew the message, so it could have been transferred telepathically. Ford's performance might have been a demonstration of his extraordinary powers of ESP, but it was not proof of communication with Houdini. Unquote. I've often wondered if Sullivan Ballew's wife ever felt a comforting breeze on her brow. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. Lovers and Other Strangers, Sarah McLachlan with Angel. To look back is a task. It is like re-entering a trap or a labyrinth from which one has only too lately and too narrowly escaped. Louise Bogan, an American poet and critic. In April of last year, the Baltimore Sun reported that Harry Houdini's remains were to be exhumed and examined by pathologists, anthropologists, toxicologists, and radiologists to see if the 52-year-old had been murdered. The official count of his death claims that he died of a ruptured appendix after being punched in the stomach by a college student who was testing Houdini's stomach muscles. His great-nephew thought he might have been poisoned by his enemies for debunking their claims of contact with the spirit world. The death certificate said peritonitis, but there was no autopsy. Because of that fact, rumors began to circulate that he could have been poisoned. Now, I haven't heard the results of the investigation, but it's amazing that a conspiracy theory still exists all these many years later. In 2003, a very rare caterpillar was discovered. Its finding was reported by the New Zealand Press Association, probably the thinnest caterpillar on record, less than 1 millimeter. It was discovered living inside the stems of plants. It would have to escape to the outside to become a moth. It was named Houdinia flexilissima, after the famous escape artist. The date was March 24th, 1874. Harry Houdini was born in Budapest, Hungary. Lloyd C. Douglas concludes tonight, if we are immortal, we are immortal now. If we are to survive, the future life will be a continuation of our life now. It will be different only in respect to its larger freedom. And the chief attribute of that freedom will be our escape from the dread of death and transition. Lovers and Other Strangers from 98.1 CHFI. That concludes another chapter of Lovers and Other Strangers. Lovers and Other Strangers returns long after the sun sets. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.
Passion set to words and music. Lovers and Other Strangers on 98.1 CHFI.